What's up, y'all? I am Marcus, also known as EpicNameBro, and I want you to kick off your shoes and relax your socks and enjoy another episode of Demon's Chat. Obviously, we have Postcom here today. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to go and we are going to take care of a little business with Mr. Stockpile Thomas. We need to complete his side quest, and also we need to drop off some upgrade materials, and I'll talk about the reasons why after we actually do it. Postcom today because I wanted to actually play this without talking. It's fun to do every once in a while.
That hairpin, that belongs to my daughter. Then she didn't make it after all. My dearest little baby. May she rest in peace. May I ask you a favor? Would you mind giving up that hairpin? I'd like to have it in memory of my daughter. You're a saint. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, I mustn't forget. It's not much, but please accept this as thanks. I'm a bit ashamed to say, but I found it one day, discarded on the main road. But it seems to possess a strange power. Anyway, I feel that you should have it. It will be happier in your hands. Hello again. I'm keeping a close watch on your belongings, rest assured.
Alright, so we're going to deposit all of these upgrade stones here. They weigh a ton, and if you've only played Dark Souls, you haven't played Demon Souls before, you see in the bottom right there we have this, or actually let me move myself here. Alright, now you can see it. We've got this item burden figure, and you can only hold up to that amount. So right now 86 units is the most that I can hold, and if I hold more than that, then I won't be able to pick up new loot, so that's really bad. We really have to take care of that. Another thing I wanted to talk about is unused content in this game. The broken archstone that they didn't have time to complete. There are files on the disc that actually there are enemies and things already completed with animations and stuff like that. They just didn't have time to finish all that content, so it got cut. There's actually a lot of cut content in this game. I'll put a link to the wiki that's got all of the info on it. One of the things that was cut was actually a woman, a girl who may have been Thomas's daughter. There was supposed to be a woman hanging that you were supposed to finish off, put her out of her misery.
If only something could be done to help her.
Yeah, so that was some of the cut content.
You have a heart of gold. Don't let them take
True
it
Death
from
Mode was another piece of cut content. One of the most interesting ones to me. We're gonna stop here and get Soul Arrow to deal with the salamanders. I'm gonna go back to my hell bitch. Don't worry about that. But we're gonna use Soul Arrow for now.
Be careful. Normally, I had to make
was something called Tell-All. 1 second, let me move this over here so I can see. All right, there was a character called Tell-All that was. A lot of people have speculated that this character was kind of a prototype of the Monumental, and that Tell-All actually was replaced by the Monumental. I actually have a different interpretation of the Tell-All character, and like I said, use the link to read all the dialogue for yourself, or follow the link to hear it. I think that Tell-All was actually going to be this game's version of Darkstalker Cath. I think that that's what the Tell-All was intended to be. That's just my looking at it. You know, this is hindsight. We've seen Dark Souls. We've seen where they kind of took this similar story and what they ended up turning it into. And I think that there are lots of hints in Dark Souls that the Dark Wraiths aren't really necessarily bad and that Gwyn's not necessarily good and all that. I think that they exist in Demon Souls, but it's a lot more subtle, and I think that the cut content may have actually made it more clear. This is just my take on it, though. I don't really know for sure. There's no way to know for sure unless we actually get an interview with Miyazaki or something like that. It would be really cool. But yeah, so do check out that cut content. I know a lot of people are interested in Thomas's daughter. I believe that she was cut out of the game. There's lots of like really cool enemy models that they never actually used. But let's see. I got a message from Guardian Owl. He said, right above the monumentals, you can see a row of lots and lots of candles. I'm guessing those are the type of candles that are talking about the Maiden in Black, the Maiden in Black's responsibility. That certainly explains the long pole she carries that she needs to get the candles out of reach. And he said, I took it to mean the monumentals are invulnerable to physical damage but are not immortal. Perhaps their soul can be stolen or their soul power eventually runs out and they can no longer sustain existence in their statue body, like dying of old age. I kind of think this might actually be true. The eye stones are something that really constantly come up in my mind. You find corpses that are imprisoned that you would think would maybe have a nexual binding, but you often find like an ephemeral eye stone, which is a deteriorated eye stone, and we could talk more about that later in the series. This ambush spot that we're at right now, I swear, countless playthroughs I went through this game without actually realizing to bust through those barrels and come over here. And I equipped the thief ring, and I'm gonna snipe these guys with some soul arrows. And the whole reason why is there's a crystal lizard there that I'm going to try to get. So yeah, no, this is a really cool little secret over here. But yeah, no, I thought Guardian Owl brought up some interesting stuff there, as always. Let's see. I got another message from Ben Nutley that said the term RPG is vague as far as the previous video's topic on the manner in which different people like to make their characters. Some people like to roleplay themselves, some as their ideal, some as someone completely new. If there was a set main character in a Souls game, it would force the player to play as someone new, but I think that FromSoft are good at making RPGs because they give the player the choice between different types of role-playing. As you said, Marcus, they are good at creating a world with a story within it. They create a universe and put the player inside it. They don't just show you a world about some predefined main character's experience, they allow you to create your own experience. And I completely agree with that. But I think that we should note that it's a strength and a weakness. But it just depends on the type of player that's approaching the game. Like for someone like me, I don't really like having a set defined main character. I don't like having a linear narrative spoon-fed to me, and I don't really like customizing my adventure with dialogue trees. It's not interesting or exciting to me. But a lot of people do like that, and for them, the Souls games aren't really a good match. So it's kind of like, it's not really good or bad, it's just who it fits for. But I really appreciate the fact that the Souls games do exist because, there are plenty of games that have that set narrative, that set character. So it's really nice that there are some games like the Souls games. Here you see me getting in trouble, but I'm trying to finish the job. There we go, got it. And he completely whiffed that. This is really good. But I chose this comment because it actually broaches a bigger topic that I wanted to talk about, and that's RPGs in general. I think that the RPG genre is dead. Now, before you jump to any conclusions here, I'm not saying RPGs have gotten shittier and shittier and shittier over times, although sometimes I do feel that way, but that's not what I'm referring to here. What I'm talking about is the idea of RPG as a genre. In the first place, it was extremely vague, like from the very beginning. What is an RPG? Well, there's two kind of major components to it. There's one, the actual role-playing, like actually putting yourself in a character's position in a different role and like imagining, using your make-believe powers and playing a role, playing a different part. But really, that's never really defined role-playing genre because there are plenty of games in which you play the role of a character that we would not consider role-playing games. That's pretty much not every video game ever made, but a lot of video games are that way. Oh, by the way, we're about to run across this plank. It will break. If you screw up and miss this, you'll have to leave the world and come back to respawn the plank. And this is another reason why we had to lighten up our item burden, because this is a very heavy item that we're about to pick up right now. The Great Club, I think, or Large Club. What was it? I don't know. The Ring of Herculean Strength that we got from Thomas earlier, by the way, increases your item burden. So, Great Club, that's what it was. If you ever find yourself stuck in a world and you just need a little bit more item burden to be able to pick up some stuff, then you can always swap out one of your rings for the Ring of Herculean Strength. In any case, so that's one part, that's one aspect to what traditionally made an RPG is playing a character role, but I don't think that's really enough because you do that in almost every game. Like, you're playing a role of Mario for, whatever. Now, you could say it depends on how much depth of interaction you have with the world, how much... I mean, you could go that route. But another way that people have always classified RPGs is they have levels and experience and HP. And the thing that gets me about this, though, is that those concepts have become so ubiquitous in video games. And when I say ubiquitous, what I'm saying is they're everywhere in video games across all genres now. Like sports games, you can level up in sports games, you can level up in shooters, you can level up in racing games. Like these concepts are really convenient for games because they allow you to progress. They allow the player to have a feeling of progression, of building something, even when you're doing the same tasks over and over and over. So a lot of genres have adopted them to the point where I don't think that the term RPG really means anything at this point, because the key components of an RPG can be found in any genre in this day and age. Now, this is something that I would love for you guys to open up and debate. Maybe you feel like RPG is still a meaningful tag to have, but personally, I don't think it's really particularly useful anymore. And this is another heavy item, by the way. This is the steel shield, which is a useful, kind of a heavy, great shield, but it's another heavy item. This world's full of heavy shit. You gotta store those stones, man. I don't think RPG is such a useful term anymore. And when you go back and you look at the history of it, it's really interesting to look at the history of RPGs too, because from one perspective, you could say that role-playing games have their foundation in acting, in traditional acting, where a character literally takes on a new role. I hate these flame salamanders, man. I hate these assholes. And if you come here without the thief ring like we are right now, you're gonna have to deal with the dogs too. They can come up and surprise you as well. Soul Arrow's really useful. Royal's kind of a cheater starting class in some ways because it's just pew pew. But I digress. So from one perspective, you could say that role-playing games arose from the tradition of acting and theater. But on the other hand, military combat simulation, like wargaming, and very specifically a lot of the mechanics that we know of today that we think of as being role-playing mechanics, like experience and leveling, those go back to board games. And I know everybody's saying, oh yeah, Dungeons & Dragons, but it's not just from Dungeons & Dragons. You can trace those mechanics back even farther. There's a lot of really interesting research that people are doing on the history of board gaming. That's, before Dungeons & Dragons, there was a game called Chainmail, which was made by Gygax and whoever the other guy was. I'm sorry, I'm not a board gamer, really. It preceded Dungeons & Dragons, and before that there was the Siege of Bodenberg. What it was a medieval fantasy campaign board game where you were playing as a single character. And up until that time, most military board games, you controlled entire armies or units or something like that. So the idea that you had an individual character and that progressed came from that. And there may have been another one before that, but that's just one of the earliest ones I know of. And also experience and leveling, that apparently goes back to like Napoleonic wargaming, because there was a morale system in a lot of those games where the more victories a unit had in battle, the higher their morale would get, and therefore they would do well in other battles. And it sounds completely different from the concept of experience, except it's functionally the same. The more you win, the stronger you get, the more powerful you become. I'm sorry, I'm getting completely off topic here, but it's all really, really interesting to me that these are where these RPG ideas came from. But today, they're just everywhere to the point where I don't think... If you had showed me Demon Souls or Dark Souls when I was a kid, first of all, I would have been blown away, but I wouldn't have thought, oh, this is an RPG, because you're talking about games in that time like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, like the turn-based JRPGs, or even if you look at Bard's Tale or Wizardry or something like that, it is completely fucking different from Dark Souls. And yet, Dark Souls, Demon Souls are kind of held up today is like, this is the pinnacle of RPG. Sorry, I got on my high horse. But I think it is important. I think that it might seem like a meaningless debate whether or not we should call these games RPGs, or like whether it's a useful phrase or label. But I don't think it's entirely useless, because the words that you use to describe things, they kind of set your expectations and your assumptions. And that's really important, because your assumptions, your expectations for something are the things that you don't question. You don't look at this, well, maybe this could be done a different way and it would be better. I don't know. I'm done on this topic. I'm really interested what you guys think about this topic as well, because do you think RPG is a useful way to describe games anymore? Or is that blood or rust on that wheel? I think this may be the first time I've ever noticed how like bloody or maybe rusty that is. I don't know. Rust would make more sense since it is a metal water wheel. I guess that would make more sense. I don't know, man. I don't know anything anymore. All right. Yeah, so please tell me what you guys think about. Am I crazy? First of all, actually, are you interested in the history of RPGs like I am? Because I've honestly been considering making a series just talking about the history of RPGs. I don't know if it would be on this channel or how I would do it. I don't know if it would be best as a series of articles or whatever, but there's a lot of research that I would be interested to do. I love the level design in Demon's Souls, even though people say, well, it's not as interconnected as Dark Souls. Yeah, that's true, but the way the levels do manage to loop back on themselves is really great. This Ring of Poison resistance we may use in the Valley of Defilement in Part 2. I don't know. Let's do a little chat, like separate from Demon's Souls for a second. You Americans who follow college sports in the States may have heard about this. I don't know how many people in Europe have actually heard about this, or Europe, Asia, Africa, South America. Let me be inclusive here, because there are viewers from all channels, there are viewers on this channel from all parts of the world. And I know a lot of my Brazilian bros really appreciated the shout out I gave to the ridiculous prices they have in Brazil. I'm contemplating doing a special video on that. Just like people talk about how high prices are everywhere else. Man, there are places throughout South America, and like Brazil especially has insane prices, but it's beyond the point. NCAA, Power of Five Autonomy. Recently, the NCAA, the National Collegiate Athletics Association, I think is what it is, in the U.S., took a vote to allow the top 5 biggest conferences, which is the SEC, the ACC, the Pac-12, Big Ten, and the Big 12. Big 10, the Big 12, and the Pac. They have Big 10 and Big 12. I never really thought about that. I'm an SEC guy, so what do I care? But they're going to let the top 5 biggest conferences are going to be able to make their own rules different from the smaller schools. And the reason why this is important is because the rules that they're wanting to make have to do with compensating student athletes. They're wanting to be able to give them a little bit more money, which their goal is to meet the real cost of attendance, like not just tuition and books and room and board. Like there's gas. There is some students don't have a car. They want to be able to perhaps bring their parents to games and things like that. So the schools are wanting to give those athletes a little bit more money. I'm gonna stop right here and say this is a very important item for our build that we just picked up here. This the Chris knife, Chris blade, I guess, in the English version. In the Asian version, it's Chris knife. In the Japanese version, I think it's Chris knife. So it's knife. It's the same thing. But what this does is when you're holding it, it increases the magic damage that you take, but it increases the magic damage that you do. So if you're doing any sort of mage build, this is a pretty kick-ass weapon to have in your hand. You'll want it in one hand, and then your wand, your Harry Potter wand, in the other. Don't think it affects enchant weapon, if I remember right. I need to brush up on my Demon Souls mechanics. I'm not sure, but I don't think it affects enchant weapon. But it will affect our spells, and it's very important for us. But yeah, going back to the NCAA's rule changes, the thing that gets me is that these are professional sports. Like, people pretend like this is amateur sports. Like the student athletes are complete amateurs, and they don't get paid. They don't get compensated like a professional would. But the schools make millions and millions and millions of dollars every year off of these athletes. And they use their images, their likenesses in games and on TV commercials, and they sell jerseys and bobbleheads, and they make millions of dollars off of these athletes without paying them anything. I mean, yes, tuition, room and board, yes, and that's expensive, but compared to what some of them would make if these rules weren't in place, it's nothing. Literally nothing. So I think that we're taking another step forward towards the disappearance of amateur collegiate athletics. Of course, this has a lot of ramifications. Right now we're talking about men's football and basketball. How this affects women's sports remains to be seen. Anyway, let me get off this topic because I know I'm jumping around a lot today, but there's just so much interesting stuff to talk about right now. But this fight, I really appreciated it when that spider web whipped around me as I was dodging it, and as I was rolling past and through all those fireballs right there. The use of perspective in this fight, I never really paid that much attention to it before. Like, as you're coming up that tunnel and you're dodging the shit that's flying at you, and then you get up, and it's just it gives you a really epic experience. Epic, I know it's overused, but that's the best way I can describe it, because when you're coming up that tunnel, it's fucking awesome. Here, you can either roll through or just block those strikes, and when you're standing in front, you can normally bait that melee out. Just got to be careful for this. When she starts shaking her ass, or he starts shaking his ass, or it starts shaking its ass, whatever, it's going to breathe that fire. I'm using the sticky white stuff on my my weapon here just to speed things up. It adds a fair bit of magic damage, so. I mean, I'm going to use enchant weapon to finish things out, but really sticky white stuff just makes it really quick and easy. Even like us right now, we have a completely unupgraded weapon. Oh, I touched that shit on the side, and now I'm completely encased. I believe the fire will burn off the webs. I'm not sure. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've been hit with the fire while I was webbed up. But you see, I'm doing absolutely jack shit for damage without the buff, but... And there it goes. So we're just going to run back to the beginning, and we're going to buff back up, and that's going to be good. The main thing here is you just absolutely do not want to get caught in that big fire, because it'll mess you up. And really the most dangerous thing, you see we're still not doing that much damage with the enchant weapon applied. Sticky white stuff gives a much bigger boost, but we can chip it out and just save that sticky white, the sticky icky. Yeah, I guess the biggest risk is actually getting webbed, and then if Armor Spider follows up that web with another breath attack, then you can be in trouble. Finish it off like a boss. Trophy, please. Do nothing. Except collect my trophy. Do not pass go. The spider stone that you get around here is for upgrading your boat. That's what it's mainly used for. Actually, I think that's the only thing that the spider stone can be used for. Listen to me. That's what it's mainly used for. No, it's the only thing it can be used for. And it increases the dex scaling of bows. Chunk of spider stone, and we should get a pure spider stone as well. Yeah, I'm really curious how the changes even if they do make those athletes into pro athletes, where they're just, it's kind of a semi-pro team affiliated with a university, but they're getting paid lots of money. Oh, no loading times. That's one of the benefits of post commentary. If they do that, I'm wondering how it's going to affect women's sports, because right now there are rules that govern the expenditures of men's sports versus women's sports. Women's sports don't bring in the same amount of money that men's sports do, but they're very important. I think, like, it's difficult to put a price tag on something like having the ability for women to play sports. Like, I think it's a big deal. I know some schools actually don't have men's soccer teams because they have men's football, but they don't have women's football, so they have women's soccer in place to balance it out. It's just, that's kind of fucking stupid too, but you know, what can you do? Alright, now give us back our hill bitch. There we go. So next we're going to go to the Tower of Latria, which this should be interesting for people who have not played Demon Souls, who are interested in Bloodborne, because, yeah, I thought about going and getting the noob knife from the temple, but nah. But they've stated that Bloodborne in general is going to have the overall atmosphere of, like, the Tower of Latria, so I'm pretty excited about that, because Tower of Latria is atmospheric as fuck. An old man took revenge on the queen by locking her family in the prison with the inhuman guards. Such a cool place. It really, really is. You see me, I'm looking at the corpse that's basically hugging the archstone, and then the sword is stabbed down through his head. Fucking crazy shit. You can hear the jailers. You can hear the chimes. It's great. The atmosphere is insane here. I will bump the brightness up in just a second. I realize that this level is just dark, all right? It is just dark. I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, it's really dark it's dark and hard to see on my screen. This is just a dark level. Demon Souls, Dark Souls too, but Demon Souls is just a dark game. But I will bump up the brightness a little bit here in just a minute. One thing I recommend the Hell Bitch, and by Hell Bitch I mean Flame Toss, for dealing with these guys, because it actually has that stun animation. So you can hit them with one, and then if you hit them with another one, you can just hit them with another one quickly, and 2 shots and they're dead. It works pretty well, even, you know, weak as we are. And there's a wooden catalyst if you're looking for a catalyst, if you didn't start with one. This is a comment that I got the other day that I said I was going to revisit. I want to revisit it now. Paper Cloud asked me, ENB, would you be interested in a From Software game with a set character and story? The Souls games use ludonarrative, story through gameplay, as the main source of story progression, which I love, but I would love to also see From try something a little different. Oh, in the first place, I would say that they do things a little bit different. Like with Armored Core, I'm not as big into Armored Core as a lot of people are. It's something that I want to get into, but I just never can. I just can't get into it. I just haven't yet, anyway. So they do have some different stuff. They do different stuff, but I'm more interested in talking about this ludonarrative, this story through gameplay, like storytelling with gameplay. Here we go. I'm bumping up the brightness for you guys on mobile, but I didn't bump it up a whole lot. And it's a fine line. It's a difficult balance. Before I talk about storytelling through gameplay, first I want to talk about what is and isn't a game. This is something that it comes up fairly often, and to me, and this is just me, this is my opinion, let me read my lips, this is my opinion. I'm not saying this is how it is and there's no debate or discussion to be had, but to me, a game has an element of competition. It requires an element of competition. You need a win condition, you need a lose condition. You need... There has to be some level of competition. It doesn't necessarily have to be against another person. For example, here, I am having a competition with the AI. I'm trying not to get eaten by this fucking Cthulhu-headed guard. And I succeeded because I used the Hell Bitch and stunned the fuck out of him. But I think a game needs some degree of competition. And that's, if you look at the various definitions of game that you can find, Merriam-Webster, Oxford, wherever, you'll see that it's normally some sort of activity that you do for fun, but also a recurring theme in the different various definitions that you can find around is this idea of competition. Now, this is important to me because, for example, reading a book is something that you might do for fun, but we would not call it a game. Why wouldn't we call it a game? Well, in the first place, it doesn't really have any rules, and there's no way to win or lose. There's no element of competition against anyone else or yourself. You can make reading a book into a game, and how would you do that? Well, you would add rules that have a win or a lose condition, or some element of competition. For example, how many books can I read this month? And can I beat how many books I read last month? That sort of thing. Then it becomes a game. Then reading books is a game. But without that, I don't think it's a game. I say this because there are constantly these titles that are trying to say that they're evolving what a game can be, when actually what they're doing is delivering something less than a game. And I don't mean inferior to a game, but I mean as literally removing elements that would make it into a game. Gone Home is one that is just... You could look at the reviews on the net, and half the people who've played it absolutely love it and think it takes your expectations and twists them and like it's amazing. And then another half of the people who played it say this is a fucking piece of shit. This isn't a game. And I don't think that those people... I think that it's not a piece of shit. It's just not what most people have in their mind when they think of a game. And in fact, to me personally, I consider it not to be a game because there's not much competition involved in it. There's no... you're not good at it. You don't get lucky with it. Like, that's not what it is. So... From one perspective, I completely understand people who want to say, well, look, this is an evolution of the media. This is an evolution of the format. And on the other hand, I completely understand people saying, no, this is just misleading marketing because this isn't a game at all. I see both sides of this. Personally, it's not for me. It's not really interesting because I play games because I like some sort of competition. And that's where I like difficulty. Oh, a prize is a one-of-a-kind jewel, but with no use in crafting, it is mostly employed simply as a guidepost. That don't make no fucking sense, man. That's a one-of-a-kind jewel that you use as a guidepost. Anyway, I'm sorry. Off track on that. And I don't want people to like take this the wrong way. I'm not like saying this is how it is and this is Gone Home is not a game and it's a piece of fucking shit. I just think that the words that we use to talk about things are outdated as hell. That's what I think, because the basic definitions of game that we use today have been around for a long time, long before video games were a thing, and I think video games are kind of an evolving art form. I don't know. I think that... I don't know, man. There's a place in the world for products like that. But I think that as long as you try to sell it as a game, you're holding it back. You're holding back the Gone Homes of the world from what they could be. They could build these huge, amazing interactive worlds and You know, a lot of people don't actually like games. A lot of people love interactive worlds and don't like games. I always get people talking about, I want to play Souls, the world design is amazing, I want to get into the lore and stuff like that, but it's too hard. I don't like fighting the enemies. Here I'm looking at the Stone of Ephemeral Eyes, like an eye stone which has deteriorated more than halfway. Proof that you have been accepted by the monumental as a demon slayer. From the blue eye stone, and the white eye stone is the white shadow of all eye stones. These eye stones, I think there's some interesting stuff there. I digress. But I think as long as you're trying to say this is a game and couch it in the terms that gamers look at things, you're dooming these projects from the start instead of looking at it a different way and trying to build this new market for this new type of media. I think there is a place in this world for interactive worlds that aren't games. I think there is a place where less is more, where you strip away some of those elements that I would personally find fun. But if you're not trying to sell it to me and you take those elements that people don't like out, you have something new and something different. And I'm really interested what you guys have to say about this. I mean, maybe you say, well, it is a game and that's that, and that's, you know, we don't need a different word to talk about stuff like this. But like I said before, I think words are important because it defines your expectations and your assumptions and what you're not going to question. And I think it's very important from a marketing perspective, because if you say it's one thing and you know for fact that a lot of people are going to think it's not that thing, but you're saying that's what it is, it's kind of it gets really shady. It gets really shady. It's and I'm not attacking Going Home here, because it is what it is. I don't know. I hate talking about topics like this because I know people are going to get pissed off and they're going to be like all back and forth in the comments, calling each other all sorts of random bullshit. But I love talking about topics like this because they're interesting, and I think there is a place for intelligent debate on this stuff, and I would love to hear what you guys have to say about it. But I don't know. I'm putting my faith in you. I'm putting my faith in you to kind of self-moderate and keep it clean. And if somebody says some stupid bullshit like, I am right and everyone else is wrong and blah, 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 then just to kindly ignore them and just go on. But I'm really interested in what you guys have to think about this, because I am all about some story through gameplay. I think that if a game doesn't use gameplay to tell a story, it's not properly, or I shouldn't say properly, it's not fully using the medium. Because what I said a game is something that has an element of competition. It has a challenge. It has win and lose. That's part of it. That is what a game has in it. You need to use that in your storytelling, or you're not using all of your tools. I love Spelunky for that reason. I love Souls for that reason, because this game is sending you a message. You are building your story through the gameplay that you actually have. In Dark Souls, whether or not you choose to join the Way of White and go with the clerics and go with Lord Gwyn, or you choose to become a Dark Wraith and hunt people down and steal their humanity, like those, the actual act of you invading another player's world and murdering them and getting some humanity out of that, you are building a story through the gameplay and based on the challenge, and it's great. I love it, and you guys know I love it. And I think a lot of games don't use that properly, and that's one of the things I guess I have against that hitbox, man. That hitbox stays so long. I guess that's one of the things I have against games that have modal difficulty selection, is that I feel like they're giving up using that difficulty as a tool for anything else, whether it's storytelling or to encourage multiplayer gameplay or whatever. I knew he was there. The one that's off by itself is the one that has the dude in it that jumps out with a knife that poisons you, but I got Royal Lotus, so it's okay. This one should be safe. I keep the Royal Lotus just in case, but this one should be safe, yeah. And that's what I have against games who just have a toggle that you can switch easy, hard, normal, because it's just they're throwing away that control. I think the developers need to keep some level of control over the difficulty so that they can use it as a tool. and a storytelling tool. That is amazing to me. That is the future of telling stories with games. At the same time, the players who don't think that difficulty adds anything to the storytelling experience, to the players who basically don't like games, I think there is a new media form that should be created for them, these interactive worlds. I think Minecraft is so huge, and I'm not saying Minecraft super, I'm just saying I think that it's so huge because there are a lot of players who just want to explore a world and build stuff and like have that sort of vicarious life there without worrying about a dark wraith backstabbing them or whatever, you know? I don't know. I realize that I've rambled on and on and on and on and on today about a lot of just different stuff, but just had a lot on my mind, man. Hell bitch. Should have stuck with the hell bitch. Oh, I ran out of MP, that's what it was. Oh well. Good old backstab, get the job done. One thing about Demon Souls magic system, it is broken as fuck because you can just keep the fragrant ring on, especially if you start as a royal. And you can just sit there and get your MP back all day. But like I said last time, it doesn't have to be balanced to be fun. Like, I mean, it needs to be balanced to a certain extent, but sometimes it's fun to just, like, pew pew, pew pew, pew pew. And that's another thing. If the game didn't offer difficulties in melee, you wouldn't get the sense of power that you get from the sitting back and burning things to a crisp with Hell Bitch. And here, oh, by the way, I forgot to suicide, so I'm still in body form when I came here. This is very risky, because if I die, I'm going to lose world tendency, which I'm going to go closer to black, which I really don't want to do. And that right there would have one-shot me if I had been in soul form. That would have taken me from 100% to 0% in one hit. Even with the Cling Ring. And the reason why is because I'm using the Chris knife, so I take more damage from magic. We're going to wrap it up right here to get... We're going to wrap it up right here today, guys. Please be kind to each other and me, but mostly each other in the comments. I know people are going to have strong opinions, but let's just be cool about it, and let's see what we can figure out. Because there's stuff to figure out. There really is. Later, guys. Sumeria and Dark Chat as soon as I'm able. I'm doing lots of dev work. Lots of dev work. Later.